Welcome back to The Explainer. So today, we're diving into a massive foundational shift in how we actually interact with our technology. Look, right now, it feels like literally every single app on your phone or your computer is rushing to build its own captive AI assistant, right? They all want to be your one and only smart helper. But what if the future isn't about their AI at all, but yours? Today, we're exploring a paradigm shift that's been dubbed Bring Your Own Agent. We're going to unpack how AI is moving from being this locked-in feature of a specific app to a personal agent that you own, you control, and you take with you. And to really wrap our heads around how this works, we're going to start with a super everyday concept I know you're already deeply familiar with. Think about Google Docs suggestion mode for a second. It is absolute magic when you really stop and think about it. You write a sentence. A colleague comes in, crosses half of it out, drops in a new phrase, and leaves a little note in the margin for you. Suddenly, that document isn't just a static page anymore. It becomes this brilliant, living conversation with a paper trail. And the reason this specific loop matters so much is that disagreement, revision, and approval all happen in one single place. You don't have to jump into some messy, separate email thread to explain what you change. You just do it right there in context, and the other person decides if it makes the final cut.
Okay, so let's dive into this. Picture that exact same totally familiar interface, but let's swap out your human coworker for an AI agent. Imagine the next suggestion popping up in that margin doesn't come from your boss, it comes from your agent. It might ask you a clarifying question about your tone. It might propose a much tighter, punchier sentence. And then, and this is absolutely crucial, it waits while you accept, reject, or push back. The experience feels entirely natural because the shared context, the visible changes, the review trail, it's all already there. But once you picture that seamless collaboration, a much harder question immediately pops up. Whose agent is actually sitting in that margin? Historically, software has answered that question entirely in the app's favor. If you want a smarter workflow, you have to hand the app more of your life. But honestly, this default bargain is starting to feel incredibly broken. I do not want every single scheduling tool to permanently hold my calendar. I do want my real calendar visible when I'm actively trying to schedule something. I do not want every writing app to become the permanent home of my private thinking. I do want my agent to help me shape a draft wherever I happen to be typing. I do not want every tool to become a walled garden. I want my private context to come with me through an agent I control. The emotional cost of handing over our digital keys to every new app is just getting way too high.
And that brings us directly to the core of today's explainer, the inversion named Bring Your Own Agent, or BYOA. This is the paradigm shift where your personal agent brings your context to the software rather than the software trapping your context inside its own captive AI. It completely flips the power dynamic. Instead of you visiting a walled garden and having to play by the app's rules, the app essentially becomes a stage, and you bring your own smart contextual assistant onto that stage to get the work done.
And this brilliantly illustrates the load-bearing triad of this BYOA future. Think of it like a puzzle where everyone has a very specific job. The app, its only job is to own the shared surface, just the interface where the work happens. The agent, its role is to securely bring your private context to that surface, but literally only for as long as it's needed. And the human? We retain the ultimate power here, owning the final commit. We make the final call. So let's get into some concrete examples of how this triad works in the wild, starting with the people who usually get to live in the future first.
Let's start with developer workflows. When developers work with coding agents right now, they end up with a ton of plans, usually as markdown files. The agent drafts a plan, the human reads it, and then, well, the human wants to do something far more precise than just vaguely telling a chatbot to make this better. They want to mark it up. They want to strike out a bad section, highlight the one sentence that actually nailed their goal, and leave a comment explaining exactly where the AI went off the rails. They need to teach the agent in context. Which brings up a really memorable point. When reviewing AI-generated code, we have to remember a red line is intent with a paper trail. Generated text has this sneaky way of looking incredibly authoritative even when it's completely wrong, right? If we just blindly accept AI drafts without refining them, the system just amplifies the noise. So the real, valuable artifact isn't actually the clean, final piece of code. The real value is the review trail, what you accepted, what you rejected, and exactly why you did it. Those red lines are what actually capture human intent. And we can already see this exact workflow happening in forward-thinking tools like Planinator and Proof. In step 1, the agent acts as a visible collaborator, drafting a plan right in a shared editor. Then, in step 2, the human jumps in, reviews it, and richly marks up that draft using suggestion mode.
And finally, step 3, the agent actually learns from that specific markup for its next pass. The agent is totally present, but the human securely owns that final commit. Okay, let's step away from coding for a second and look at a problem I guarantee every single one of us has faced. The dreaded scheduling problem. Scheduling apps are amazing, but they have a massive, glaring flaw. They're the most useful when they intimately understand your calendar, but they're the least trustworthy when they demand a permanent, standing key to your calendar to do it. Think about it for a second. You're handing over all your private meeting titles, attendee lists, locations to a third-party app, basically giving up your digital soul just so it can find a 30-minute window for a Zoom call. It's a massive overreach.
But look at how the bring your own agent model completely solves this. There's an experiment called Tempo that shows this perfectly. Instead of handing over the keys, actually scratch that, instead of handing over your whole digital life, the workflow changes entirely. Step 1, the scheduling app just exposes a shared public grid. It just owns the coordination surface. Step 2, your personal agent, which lives securely with you, privately checks your calendar. It creates a shadow version showing only busy or free time. No titles, no locations. And then step 3, you review and approve the public slots. The app never touches your actual calendar. Your agent brought the context, kept it private, and you owned the commit. It's honestly brilliant. Now let's look at a highly novel third domain where this shape is starting to appear: customer support. Imagine encountering a bug in some software. Normally, you're forced to remember exactly what you clicked, take a bunch of screenshots, and write out this tedious report. But what if the customer support surface expected you to arrive with your own agent? Your agent remembers every single step you took. It remembers every API request, every raw error body. Your agent could interface directly with their support surface and file the absolute perfect bug report on your behalf. But this brings up a stark pivot in how we have to think about software. It raises the ultimate stakes, what we call the operator question. If your customer brings an agent to your product, what happens next? Think about the software you build or manage or even just use every day. When an AI agent shows up at your digital front door trying to get work done on behalf of a user, is it going to be a smooth collaboration or is it going to be a total disaster? Because let me tell you, when apps aren't ready for this, the results are incredibly chaotic. If an app isn't built to welcome an agent, the agent has to clunkily scrape the website and just guess what buttons to click. It gets blocked by opaque permission errors that it can't even read. Or worse, because the app's failure paths are totally illegible to machines, the agent pretends it succeeded when it actually failed. And the ultimate defeat here? The human is forced to jump in and manually copy and paste information between disconnected surfaces anyway. The whole promise of having an agent is just ruined. So how do operators actually fix this? Well, the prescription is quite clear, and it starts entirely with user experience, not some massively complicated technical standard. To build a welcoming product, make the agent visible on the shared surface. Make sure any work the agent does is easily reversible. Keep authorship crystal clear. We need to know what the human wrote versus what the AI wrote. Give the agent a way to learn the rules of your app before it takes action. Allow it to fail honestly so it can report back to the user. And above all else, always keep the human at the commit point. To summarize everything we've covered today, the era of the walled garden is coming to an end. The future of collaborative software is definitely not every single app building its own isolated captive AI assistant that tries to hoard your contact and your calendar. No way. The future is you, the user, arriving at a software surface already empowered with your very own agent. The app provides the workspace, your agent provides the brain and the context, and you pull the trigger. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to wrap up our time today. For the builders, the operators, and even just the users thinking about the tools they rely on every single day, is your app ready to welcome the user's agent, or will it try to trap it? The good apps are going to be ready for this shift. The ones that aren't, well, they might just get left behind. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating topic. Keep learning, keep questioning the software you use, and I will see you in the next explainer.